Something about Chole, she has a very amazing connection to God. We were told we were high risk to have a child with Down syndrome. After her birth, we found out she did have Down syndrome. We took her home, loved her, focused on her abilities, not her disability, and just began working with her with early intervention. And at the time, I was a city policeman. In 2009, 3 city police officers that I knew very well were killed in an ambush, and one of them was a really good friend of mine. And he's buried up by Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh. So when I would take Chole there for appointments, I would stop and pay my respects. And Chole would talk to him. Then she started making comments about him. And then I would go visit his parents after appointments. During one visit, Chole was talking to his parents, and she said, "I have to tell you something. I see Paul up in heaven, and he's holding a baby. It's a baby boy, and it's his brother. His name's David. And he's holding him in heaven." And the parents both started crying just uncontrollably. And I said, "Oh, I'm very sorry." And they go, "No, Kurt, you won't believe what we have to tell you." When Paul was killed in this ambush, 43 years earlier, they had miscarried a baby boy, who David was one of the names they were thinking about for the boy. And only they knew about this miscarriage. And when Paul was killed, they said to each other, "Well, now he's in heaven with his baby brother." And Chole was standing there in their house telling them that she saw him up in heaven holding his baby brother.
Hey everyone, isn't that awesome? I have with me today Kurt and Kurt Kondrich. Here they are. Welcome them in. Hey Kurt, great to see you.
Great to see you, and thanks again for your interest in our story and for all that you're doing to spread the good news about these amazing individuals.
Oh, absolutely. It's my complete pleasure. Now, take us back just a little bit. Basically, tell us your story. You were a policeman for so many years and you quit the force. Take us back to there and tell us your story.
Sure. As a kid growing up, I wanted to be one of two things, either a police officer or soldier. When I went to school, there wasn't much going on in the military world, so I elected to become a police officer, and I'm from Western Pennsylvania. When I graduated, there weren't a lot of jobs here, so I applied and I started my career down in Atlanta, Georgia, where I was a police officer in the city of Atlanta for several years, and then from there moved down to South Florida. I was a police officer down there. And then in the early 90s, my hometown here of Pittsburgh had a big retirement, and they started hiring veteran officers. And I came back here. My mother and father and all my siblings and relatives were still living in Pittsburgh. So I came back to Pittsburgh. I'm not a fan of the cold weather, but I'm a fan of family. So I came back up here and became a city of Pittsburgh police officer. And I like to tell people, Jeff, I had my whole life planned out. I know exactly what I was going to do, where I was heading, and and I like to also say that God had a different plan for me. He was my years as a policeman. He was training me for my mission that I have right now.
Wow. So how did this mission start?
So I came back up. I was a city of Pittsburgh police officer. I wasn't married at the time. I met my beautiful wife, Margie, actually, when I was walking the beat. She worked at a hair salon. We dated and, fell in love, got married. And we were a little older when we got married. And our son, Nolan, who's a awesome young man, he was born when we were 36. My wife was pregnant, had Nolan at 36. And then we weren't sure we could have any more kids. So we actually were looking at adoption, but God had other plans. So my wife became pregnant. It was pregnant. We knew we were having a girl. We named her Chole in the womb. My son Nolan was 4 at the time, was talking to his sister in the womb. And
that's cool.
But during the pregnancy with Chole, like I said, we were 40 at the time. My wife was 40 and so was I. We were offered prenatal testing. We were told during that time that we were high risk to have a child with Down syndrome.
And that's because of the age?
Yes.
Just high risk? Okay.
Yep. And I always like to tell people the word risk doesn't connotate something nice. It's fear. Risk. You don't want your kids taking risks. So every time we had an appointment or follow-ups, they kept, kind of pushing these prenatal tests, and we refused them. And, I remember during one conversation, I said to the medical person, "Well, what if we take these tests and it comes back positive for Down syndrome?" I said, "Then what?" And they were like, "Well, then you can make a decision." And I was like, "Well, what kind of decision?" They were like, basically whether you want to continue the pregnancy. So I just found it ironic that I'm a city police officer and people are telling me if my wife takes a test who's pregnant with Chloe, and we don't like the results of the test, so we can terminate our own child, an innocent child. I call it, prenatal slaughter, or prenatal execution, because she didn't meet a cultural mandate. So that really bothered me immensely. But like I said, we refused all the tests, and Chloe was born in May of 2003 I could tell people she had a postnatal Down syndrome diagnosis. And when she was born, I remember the doctor, my wife delivered Chloe via C-section, and Chloe was crying. She had aspirated, and they were clearing her lungs. And I said to the doctor, "Is she okay?" And he just looked over at me with his mask on and said, "Your daughter has characteristics of Down syndrome. Nothing nice, nothing pleasant or whatever." And I said to him, "Can I hold her?" And he said, "Yes." And he goes, "You want to hold her?" Like almost like surprised. And I said, "Yeah, bring her to me." So he brought her over, and I held Chloe, and beautiful little girl, as you saw in the pictures and that, and she'll jump on here a little bit. And, I was kind of stunned at the cold reception, almost like, the doctor, I could see he wasn't real excited that my daughter was in this world. And I remember looking at her thinking, of course you're stunned, because my wife and I didn't know anything about Down syndrome at the time, but, she was our daughter, and we knew we loved her. Yeah.
It's a live human being. I mean, yeah.
Right. Our best part of my DNA, to be honest with you.
Right.
So, yeah. So we took Chloe home, and, we loved her, and her brother adored her, and, it was teaching her my little books and things. And we started really focusing on her abilities, accessing all the services, and like early intervention, and just found out that she was a beautiful child. And during that time, I started connecting with parents of kids who had, parents who had children with Down syndrome. And I was asking them questions, and every parent I spoke to who had the prenatal tests, every single one told me that they were pressured after the prenatal testing, or almost assumed that they were going to abort their child. And I just, that just flabbergasted me, because we have Chloe here. She's growing. She's beautiful. She's, bringing joy to our family and her brother and everybody. And I just thought, well, if all these people are being pressured to, and a lot of them, they told me a lot of them did. I started doing more research and connecting with families even over in Europe and that. And I learned that, in this country, it's, 60 to 70, sometimes even a higher percentage, depending on the geographic area you were in, had a termination rate. And then other countries, it was even higher.
Yeah.
90s in some of the European countries. And that was kind of my aha moment, and what propelled me into what I'm doing now.
Would you say there's a lot of doctors that are more so pressuring pregnant women than not? I mean, from your experience of people.
Yeah, I would say.
I mean, it's kind of sad if there's by and large more doctors that are, pressuring women to have second thoughts about the whole pregnancy. I mean, that's really sad in our medical community.
Well, the first thing in Hippocratic Oath is do no harm. I mean, and
right.
I think exactly that medical professionals, I always say they just assume, because these individuals don't meet the misguided cultural mandates for perfection, that they need to be terminated. And it says a lot about our culture right now, and our priorities and everything else. It's just, it's tragic, and it's a prenatal genocide. When you have an individual who is identified, targeted, and terminated, then that's eugenics. That's
exactly.
And I ask people, Jeff, a lot, what if we have a prenatal test for autism, or for baldness, or for being short, or depression, or any other types of things that the culture wants to eliminate, and that's what was happening. So when I learned about that was, God just kept pushing me. I prayed a lot. I could feel God saying to me, almost like, I think of Isaiah 5:8, whom shall I send? Send me. Like he was, what are you going to do about it, Kurt? I just thought, well, I don't know. What am I going to do about it? I'm just dumb. I mean, not dumb, just a beat
just
cop.
A cop. Yeah.
But I
prayed about it. What point did you like, okay, I'm going to quit the police force? And what made you decide that? And what was their reaction?
I had enough vested time to take a partial, just leave, and it was kind of a leap of faith. And I I felt God pressuring me, honestly, Jeff. And I went in, I did it kind of fast. I didn't want any hoopla. I was
Right.
very well liked in the police department, especially for my community interactions. I did a lot of work with got a lot of awards for things like that. So I did it real quiet. I went down there and did my resignation. I was down at the main thing and handed my stuff in. I was actually I didn't want to party. And my wife wanted to, I said,
Right.
no, I'm a low key person. And
Right. It's not a retirement.
yeah. And the chief got a hold of me. He didn't even know I was leaving. He was very sad because he knew I did a lot in the community and made the department look good and a lot with that type of stuff. And I explained to him, he knew I'd had Chole. Everybody in the department knew that I had a daughter with Down syndrome. And I explained to him what I was doing. And he respected, I really loved our chief at the time. And I just, went on from there and took that leap of faith, that's what it was, a leap of faith into where I was heading next, which was, God guiding me into that. But the police department, like I said,
You didn't get any pushback from too many?
They wanted me to stay. They really
Right.
did. And they said, what are you doing? You're crazy. You could rise in the ranks and you had so much, you could have been. And that was my plan. Like I said, Jeff.
Right. Initially, yeah.
Yeah. Make rank and, rise up through there and, and be very successful, like as an officer in that. But God uses that. God doesn't call it qualified. He qualifies the called. And I know.
Absolutely.
I'm always into God's word, and God uses people who do push back a lot and don't, Moses, Jonah, Mary and Joseph, everybody. They're not people that, all the disciples that Paul, and I felt like because during this time I kept hearing these stories of people being pressured to abort these kids. And my job has always been as a police officer to defend and protect. So I thought I'm kind of missing my calling if society is, trying to eliminate people like my own child, and me as a police officer, which I've done all my life, does nothing about it. Then what am I, who am I as a person, so like I said, I took that leap of faith. I left the police department. I actually went back to school. I met some people in the disability community. I went back to the University of Pittsburgh, got my master's degree in early intervention. And I thought, I'm going to get involved with the disability community, because another thing that really surprised me was the lack of interest from the secular disability community on what was happening to these kids. And I thought, if I get involved and start connecting people and talking about this, maybe what can raise awareness. So that was my first step in all this. Yes.
What was your wife's reaction, if you don't mind me asking? That would
sure.
I say at the dinner table, say, "Hey, I'm quitting."
Yeah, she was stunned and amazed because she knew my passion for being a police officer, and I told her I want to do something about what's happening to these kids, and I think she was leery about what I was going to be able to do, but I felt strongly that God was, my pastor always says to be obedient and available, and that's what I was following, was I'm going to be obedient and available to this calling of defending and protecting these kids. So that's what happened. And I said, I started connecting with people in the disability community. And through those connections, I got appointed to some different committees. And I actually became the chair of the Governor's Advisory Council for Early Intervention. And that was God. He really opened doors, because I got to go to our state capitol and meet legislators, both parties.
Wow.
And I'll make this very clear. this is not a political issue. This is a human issue. This is
It's a life issue. Absolutely.
It's a life issue, right?
Yeah.
It affects everybody. So,
but one thing I want to reflect back on our on the little intro video, where you visited the grave of your buddy and his parents. When that happened, did that blow you away, or was it just kind of like,
that completely blew me away. That was, I wept. I'll be honest with you. I don't.
And I'm sure they did. That's.
I still do weep. When Chloe goes to Children's Hospital, she'll say to me, "I want to see Paul," and she's saying yes, and I'll drive down there and just to pay my respects. And I still, every time I drive down there, I weep, to be honest with you, because. Wow. But when Chloe told them the information she told them and this and that, absolutely, I just.
Baby. Yeah. When I first seen that, I was just like, wow, and I've had, I have one friend she's like, people with Down syndrome have a special heart line to God.
Yep.
They're more than extra special with that extra chromosome. There's something really extra special about people with Down syndrome, and that alone shows it, and that blows me away. And of course, I know not everyone with Down syndrome, has but they all have, like I say, special abilities, not disabilities. And I can't imagine, when you first heard that, her first say that to that couple, I can't imagine what that was like. Has there been anything else kind of like that, or was that kind of like the one thing that you're just like, oh my gosh?
I mean, Chloe will go out. We're outside sometimes, and she'll look up in the sky, and she'll say she sees Jesus, and he's talking to him, and she hears things. And as we go through this, I'm going to tell you my experience at the White House when we were at the president. But during that time, Chloe actually, when we were at the White House during the March for Life speech, she actually looked up in the sky during that and said, "Dad, I see him," and started pointing up in the air. And there were Secret Service agents all around that. I said, "Who do you see, honey?" Because I see Jesus. And I know she saw him because she was very adamant about it, and was pointing up there that she saw him. But she sees Jesus. She talks to him. I know she does. I know he, and she has a connection. Like I said, she doesn't, because she's the extra chromosome. I actually wrote an article that Adam and Eve had Down syndrome until the devil stole the extra chromosome, because these individuals have an unconditional love of purity and innocence and lack of malice and evil that all of us should try to replicate.
I can imagine some of them Secret Service agents maybe was hearing her and kind of like did this kind of thing. Maybe not, I don't know. But
no, they were looking up. They probably thought it was.
They're like, there's something going on. Yes. Oh no, we didn't clear the sky. Wow.
But they loved it after we told them. Actually, a couple of them gave Chloe their little Secret Service pins. I still have those. I wear the one on
cool.
Yeah,
that is so cool.
And there was a canine officer we met in the Secret Service who sent Chloe a little stuffed dog of her That's dog, cool. For Secret Service. So it's been a really neat.
Wow. Now, how did that all come about? I mean, not just anybody can meet any president. And you and Chloe, you met President Trump. That's amazing. That is so cool.
It
Chloe,
is.
That is. I mean.
Say
hi, Chloe. Was President Trump nice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did President Trump do, Chloe? What did he do? He kissed you where?
The head.
Kissed you on the head. He kissed her on the head, and she gave him one of the books that we're going to be sending you a signed copy of her book that she's in called Brilliant Souls. Jeff, is honestly, to lead up to that, after I left the police department, I just started advocating and doing a lot of, just outreach and educating people. And, Chloe, pregnant mothers have to get factual supportive information as being told to abort. I guess we just started developing a reputation, and the word got out. And this is how we got to the White House. We got invited to the United Nations a few times and to speak. And I guess, people at the White House had heard about us and the things we were doing. And I remember my phone rang on a Saturday, and it was a 212 area code, which is DC. And I thought it was a spam call, but I picked it up, and it was the president's assistant said, we'd like you to come down for the March for Life. The president's going to address the nation live for the first time. Other presidents had sent messages, but he was going to stand at the White House. And I thought it was once it was kind of a charade, but, and so we went down there to DC and got through about 27 layers of security. And we were walking up to the White House in the Rose Garden. I thought we were going to sit there, and the lady goes, "Oh no, you're going to stand right behind him. He wants you right behind him." And I'm like, "Oh,
that's awesome." Wow.
Yeah, we stood there, and that's where Chloe saw Jesus. And after he came over and talked to Chloe, and he actually leaned down, kissed her on the head, and he stood up in front of me and said, "She's beautiful." And it's amazing. We were pretty good friends with Vice President Pence.
I think that's probably unprecedented in and of itself. I don't know my history that well, but I don't know too many other presidents that have ever done anything like that. I mean, maybe there is one out there. I don't know, but
there isn't. there's no president that's ever addressed the March for Life live. So
that's what I thought.
Yeah, no, the other one, like I think President Bush sent a message, and even President Reagan
Right.
had, but no president has addressed the March for Life live during the March for Life in the Rose Garden at the White House. Never happened. And no president has ever had a child with, or an individual with Down syndrome standing next to them, you know, and like I said, Chloe became friends with Vice President Pence, and actually a picture of Vice President Pence and Chloe was on the West Wing of the White House wall for, you know, for a while. And I know that's never happened either. So it's just, Chloe's made a lot of historical,
very cool friends.
Yeah, and it's how God, as a matter of fact, when Roe v. Wade was overturned last year, we have a good friend in Congress, Kathy McMorris Rogers from Washington State. She has a son with Down syndrome. And right after Roe v. Wade was overturned, she's in leadership. She went to Congress and addressed, you know, to talk about this historic legislation. And the first person she mentioned after the abortion was ended was Chloe in her remarks in that, just talking about.
Wow.
So that was, it's been pretty neat. You know,
That is cool.
we should write about it someday.
I'm telling you, I'm going to play a real quick clip here, about a minute and a half.
My name is Robbie Conrad. I was born and 3 with Down syndrome.
During the pregnancy, my wife and I were 40 at this time, and we were pressured to have prenatal tests. They said we were high risk to have a child with Down syndrome. Well, you could make a decision whether or not you would like to keep your daughter.
Wow.
So we did not have genetic tests. Chloe was born, and we found out shortly after she had Down syndrome. Is a beautiful little girl. We treasured her. We brought her home and started focusing on all the abilities she had, not just on her disability. She learned how to read. She likes to swim. She likes to play basketball, baseball. And she changed me. She made me really leave a career that I thought I'd be doing all my life and go take a leap of faith, go completely into working as an advocate, working as a person to defend and protect these people.
Yeah, ready. 1, 2, 3.
Chloe's taught me more life lessons than anybody else ever in my life.
I love that video. That's an awesome video. I want to make sure I gave credit. What is the name? Is it Aletia? Did I say it right?
Alicia, it's an
Alicia.
international
Okay.
Catholic website. It's based in Rome, and the producer was Anna Raza Favaglia. I saw you put her name on there. She
Yes.
was a Italian filmmaker who covers Rome and the Vatican, and she was at the United Nations when Chloe and I spoke there the first time, and she loved our story so much she actually flew back from Italy after the UN and met us in Pennsylvania, and that she made that video, which went out all over the world. I think it was like 8 different languages, and you know, we've connected with parents all over the world because of that video.
Yeah, and I believe you can see it on your own website too. It's a great video if anybody wants to see it in full. It's about 4.5 minutes or so. There's your website. It's a great video. It's beautifully done. Hats off to them. And it tells I wanted to tell just a little bit of that we've already talked about, but it's a really beautifully done video. And it shows Chloe and how happy she always is. And I'm sure there's days where she has a day or two here and there. We all do have some days, but by and large, you know, they're just, anybody with Down syndrome, I believe, should be celebrated. They're wonderful, wonderful people. Now, tell me about you've spoken at, like you said, at the United Nations a few times, and you've also gotten legislation or helped legislation get passed, and something that's called Chloe's Law. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure.
What is Chloe's Law?
Absolutely. So after I was appointed to some of those committees, Chloe and I started going to our Pennsylvania Capitol, meeting with legislators, and I would take her there just to share her abilities And I would also get them to meet my daughter and look her in the face. She would sign books for them. And then I would say, "Is my daughter any less valuable than other members of our great state of Pennsylvania?" And I like to tell people I kind of haunted them. Like, it's almost like the Christmas story. I was the ghost of disabilities, past, present, and future. And I told them stories and showed videos of her reading. And like I said, it was just our way of planting seeds. So during that time, we just came up with an idea. We kept hearing these horror stories of people being told to abort their children with a Down syndrome diagnosis. And, ultimately we wanted to end abortion, but we thought, well, let's at least try to get legislation here that educates these parents and gives them hope, and as opposed to just being handed the slip told to terminate the pregnancy. So that was the genesis. It was the Down Syndrome Prenatal Education Act. And we got a couple legislators up there in the Senate and the House of Pennsylvania to sponsor it. We went around to different committees, met with them. It was a lot of legwork, a lot of advocacy, but we drew this up on a legal pad in the fall of 2013 and just put the legwork into it. And at the time we were friends. It was Governor Tom Corbett was the governor of Pennsylvania then, and we became friends with him, and he supported it, but we had to get it through the House and the Senate. And Pennsylvania is a slow state, like most states. It takes forever to get anything done, but by July of 2014, basically 8 months later, that legislation had passed the Pennsylvania Senate 50-0. Pennsylvania House was like 198-2, and was on the governor's desk to be signed in 8 months. It was that in itself was a miracle. And I think I sent you pictures. Chole actually got to sign the law after the governor did, and so did a couple of her friends who have Down syndrome. And it actually made one of her little friends, Alex Lee, who signed it, parents were from South Korea, and it made the South Korean Times. And that law really is what got the word out to what was happening, because people learned about that. And a lot of people come up to me and say, "I never knew that was happening. I never knew that was happening." So it was kind of, God used that to spread the word about this prenatal eugenic movement. And that's what catapulted us to doing all the things that God uses us for today.
So what does that law do? And it's like, what does it mean if a doctor doesn't do what? I mean,
well, whenever a woman gets the prenatal diagnosis, the law mandates that they get factual, supportive, uplifting information about all the good. We didn't know about early intervention when we had Chole, and it's an amazing program. It's awesome. My hat goes off to all the people that work in that field, and special ed, and we have a Miracle League fielder, all the good things that are available, and also just the stereotypes, it breaks them down. I mean, like I said, Chole reads better than most people that I know, to be honest with you. Plus, more interest in books, but it makes sure that gets out, connects to the different organizations like the National Down Syndrome Society, National Down Syndrome Congress, Down Syndrome Association of Pittsburgh, that are there to support these families and provide them a good path for a good life. I like to tell people, Jeff, I'm not just pro-birth, I'm pro-life. And when I've gone to do advocacy, I don't just legislate for life, I legislate for programs that support life from conception to natural death. And that's why I tell people, for disabilities, you have to have those supports in place, just like you have to have for the elderly, and you have to have for victims of trauma and other things. We as a society have to fund these programs to help these people have not just a good birth, but a good life. And it's something I'm very passionate about.
You ever got any pushback from doctors about the law?
There was a little bit, during the time that a couple of doctor associations did push back, because they thought that they were the final word on things. And I think we've learned even in the last few years that they're not the final word on things. That there's, and some of the information they were even delving out was not factual. There was things still in play that said, it is. So, I'll talk to anybody. I'll go to any medical school. I'll talk in front of any audience, but I am, as a police officer in my training, I'm a fact person. Maybe anybody listeners remember Dragnet. Yeah, just the facts. I want to know the facts. I want people to have the facts, and the facts are that people with Down syndrome are a blessing to society. They're a gift. They're to be cherished, and they bring exactly what the world's missing right now, which is unconditional love, which is purity, and the things that our culture desperately needs right now.
Yeah, and I don't know anybody that wouldn't want more love in their life. I mean, who doesn't want happiness and love? I can't think of anybody. I mean, that's just, I think what we all yearn for and all live for is to be happy. And the Down syndrome community and Down syndrome kids, that's what they are. You know, it just blows my mind that if you could tell somebody that, and then you probably have met some women that are pregnant, that come up to you or know who you are or whatever. But if there's just, let's say there's somebody watching right now and she just got a diagnosis that her baby has Down syndrome, what would you tell her right now?
I've met with several people, families, women, and my first thing I say is congratulations. You're going to be blessed with a beautiful child. I tell them very positive things. Chloe has actually met with at least 3 women who are pregnant with babies with Down syndrome who might have been considering terminating the pregnancy, and after they met with her and spoke to us, they all,
Right,
gladly welcome these children. So I would tell them, you're heading to a different destination. There was a poem written about you're going to Holland as opposed to going to Paris, but it's still beautiful. And, your destination is a little different than what you thought. Just like my life's a lot different than I thought my destination would be, but it's going to be a beautiful trip. You're going to be, you're going to be blessed beyond anything you can imagine. And there's a lot of support out there for you. And, I give people my contact information, let them know if they need help with anything to call us. And, I always have Chloe, when I meet a family, sign a book and send them a book and let them know that, it's going to be, you're a chosen one, as far as I'm concerned,
yes,
to be blessed with a child. As a police officer of 20 years, I dealt with such a undercurrent in the darkness of society. And I often wonder, Jeff, what I did right for God to give me a child that doesn't have any malice, has no evil,
right,
has no
right,
hatred, will never hurt anyone. As 20 years as a police officer, I never got one call with a shooter or a drug dealer or a bullier who was a person with Down syndrome. So I just feel like I hit the lottery, honestly. And I often tell people, I want to see somebody who's disabled and messed up and broken, I just look in the mirror. My daughter's not disabled. My daughter's very abled. And, she's a very special child of God down here. And I've even
yes,
made this comment too, the devil knows how these kids are. And so he uses the prenatal testing and the false information to terminate them, because he knows these kids can be hurt just like we all can be, but they cannot be corrupted. And I mean that. You can never get my Chloe to hurt anybody, because it's not in her DNA.
right.
She doesn't have that. That's not part of hers. And so that must make the devil and anybody evil infuriated that a group of people actually walk this earth who exhibit in their actions and their likeness exactly how God created us to be. So
Do you have any, I mean, you and Chloe have done so much over the last few years. You have, I mean, besides meeting President Trump, obviously, and other things, what has been one of the biggest highlights for you? Anything specific? There's so much.
I think, so many things, Jeff, so many good memories. I mean, we've met Christian artists, and we've been, her picture's been on the big screen in Times Square 5 times. It's been chosen to be up there. She's become friends with Cardinal Nolan at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York.
That's gotta be so cool. What did Chloe think when she seen her face up there on Times Square?
Oh, she loved it. She just,
I
was
bet.
crazy, just to see that, and to, she just joy, just sheer joy to be part of that.
Absolutely.
Chosen to be part of that. It was amazing. But I think, Chloe's law was a very big part, watching her sign that
That's
law.
so cool.
That would be top 3 thing, that being at the White House, with the president for the national right to life,
Couple things.
and, speaking the United Nations, where,
Yeah.
that's amazing to be invited up to speak to a global audience.
Right. If Chloe can pop in, I want to ask her one last question before we leave. I'm just curious, what is your favorite thing to do? I know you like to swim. You like to do all kinds of things. What do you like to do?
What do you like to do, honey? Tell Jeff what you like to do.
What's your favorite thing?
I like golfing.
Golfing.
Golfing, really? Wow. That's awesome.
Chloe, we go to Top Golf. She's a really good, believe it or not, that's an interesting story. I took Chloe to Top Golf, and she was hitting them pretty good, driving them, and I filmed it. I posted it on LinkedIn, It got picked up by Topgolf. Next thing I know, this video has like 135,000 views all over the world. And then the head of Topgolf calls me because I wrote on there, Chloe loves Topgolf, wants to have her 18th birthday here. Next thing I know, the head of Topgolf calls me and says, Kurt, we're hosting Chloe's birthday at Topgolf. You can invite whoever you want. We're giving you the bays.
That
We're
is
treating
so
you everything.
cool.
And yeah, I have videos of that on my
That's
website
awesome.
too.
Yes, well, I'll have to definitely check them out on your website. I love the name of your website, Embrace, Don't Erase. That's awesome.
That came to me in the middle of the night one time. I worked night shift for 10 years, Jeff, and a lot of things come to me at night.
Yeah.
I've seen with Chloe hugging people, I think of all the hugs people are missing. I think Chloe was the flower girl at my son Nolan's wedding. I think Nolan wouldn't be the man he is today if it wasn't for his sister. And I think of all the missing siblings. So that's the tragedy of what's happening. But we're going to change it. We're definitely on.
That's right. That is awesome. Well, thank you both for coming on and telling your story and talking to me. And I'm positive this is going to be an uplifting message for many out there and for them to check out your website and everything. Thank you both for coming on. I really appreciate it.
It's an honor to speak to you, and it's an honor to have you tell our story and share it. And we deeply appreciate all that you're doing. And you're working on a movie Made with Love right now. It's going to be incredible globally. And the fact that you're doing that is it's awesome. And so we deeply appreciate it. And you will be a blessed man for what you're doing, Jeff.
Absolutely. Well, it's my pleasure. You all have a great night. Bye, Chloe.
Chloe, say bye. Sit up. Say bye, Jeff. Say bye to him. Sit up. You can wave to him. Say bye. Wave to him.
Bye, Chloe. See you soon. You have a good day.
Say thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot. You get through. Thank you. God bless you. Thanks for all you're doing.